So, taking a look at the study questions for Wollstonecraft's, chapter 2 of Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Woman. Number one, what does Wollstonecraft mean by the tyranny of man? I think what I wanted to get it out there and make sure they're all clear that by man, she means men, men as opposed to women, not man as in human beings or mankind. Man, me, I'm a man, right? That way. I mean, men, people like me, of my gender, oppress and tyrannize women. That's what she means. And I think the word tyranny is an important, carefully chosen word. Men oppress women, and men consider women to be, generally speaking, under their power, and that power is illegitimate. And so much of the book is her trying to establish that the kind of superiority that men claim over women can be the only thing that could legitimate that power. But to argue that they're not superior was, I think, the main point of the book. That is, tyranny is exercising power without right, and what she seems to want to establish is that there is no right to the power that men exercise over women. So it is a form of oppression and illegitimate. It's tyranny. Number two, why does Wollstonecraft think that the education of women is much like the education of military men? That both of their educations are bad, first of all, and they're not systematic educations. They're not scientific educations. They're not taught to think systematically, to reason things through, and to solve problems. What they're taught is a kind of a scattershot thing, which is really about particular experiences of the world, kind of a worldliness, but no knowledge of general principles. So the education of both men and both military men who don't get a real education and women who don't get a real education is a rather scattershot affair that may teach them to be worldly, but doesn't teach them to think for themselves in any kind of substantive way. It doesn't teach them to reason. Number three, how does Wollstonecraft conceive of what a real proper education should be? It should be a education of the body and the mind. I mean, she does mention the body, the development of the body, but development of the virtues, and especially the virtues of the intellect and the capacity to reason clearly and to think a question through, and knowledge of principles rather than just a sort of a scattershot sort of thing. Number four, Wollstonecraft claims that virtue has only one eternal standard. Explain the significance of this, that this has in her argument about the place of women in her society. The idea that men and women are fundamentally the same. And when it comes to virtue, excellence, the development of character, there's not a female and a male character. There's not a female and a male way of being. There's only one, really, when it comes to the important things, at least. There's one eternal standard of what it means to be a good person, you might say, and not just good morally, but an accomplished person, a person who's developed themselves. And so I think one of the things is men and women should get the same education, but they deserve the same education. A lot of people of her time would say that a man's education is wasted on a woman because a woman isn't capable of profiting from it, or the few who could are like freaks or something, right? Exceptions. What Wollstonecraft wants to say is that is, in a way, irreligious, right? Because the notion is that God created human beings with the same moral standards, right? So that there's not a morality for women and a morality for men. Although that's another thing that she's arguing against, the double standard. But there's one standard of virtue, so there should be one education, real education, right? Rather than the kind of learning how to sew and learning how to be pleasing to men and things she considers to be the typical kind of education that a woman got in her time. You had to be somebody like her, or very lucky to get, like, for instance, a real literary education as a woman during that time. She pretty much fought for it to get it for herself. I mean, it should be available to everyone.